DC is on fire over a controversial Republican plan to cut defense spending. None of what I just said is true except the reaction to all of the other parts that aren't true, and this story infuriates me. Let's try to figure out what's going on. So you might have seen over the last week headlines like this: McCarthy's speaker deal could stymie defense spending next year. Oh, wait, what do they mean? What do they mean? Well, here's as one of the many parts of the deal that he had to strike to get the holdouts to vote for him. The deal that Kevin McCarthy struck with the GOP's Freedom Caucus to secure speakership of the House only mandates a general discretionary spending freeze to fiscal year 2022 levels. So the idea there is they're gonna freeze spending, okay? They're not going to increase spending. And since spending normally goes up, the difference between what it would have been and what it's now gonna be is effectively a cut in the future. And because the military has money spent on it, if you don't think any more than what I've already said about this, then that means that in the future they're cutting the military by not raising it next year. Except that they're never ever gonna do that. No one's saying they're gonna do that. And despite that, everyone is losing their mind. They didn't say anything about the military budget during that deal that Kevin McCarthy struck. His team is working to fill in members of the Republican caucus on what it could mean though. If such a budget resolution is passed, which it hasn't been, lawmakers could divide that any way they like, with a defense cut or with a defense increase with cuts in other discretionary spending. A GOP aide said the Appropriations Committee has no intention to cut defense spending. Gee, I wonder which it'll be. If the Republicans are gonna cut defense spending or raise it anyway and cut other social spending and stuff to make up for it. Who's to say? Who is possibly any journalist or any political analyst or anything? Who is to say? I guess we should just guess that they're gonna do an about face on decades of Republican support for increasing the defense budget. And so I wanna be clear though, that all of the people around Kevin McCarthy, including members of the Freedom Caucus that he made this deal with, are being very clear that they're not cutting the military. Andy Harris, member of the Freedom Caucus, insisted that reducing military spending wasn't part of the deal. Chip Roy said that cuts to defense were never discussed and that it's the woke and weaponized federal bureaucracy that will shoulder the burden instead. Mike Rogers, House Armed Services Chair, claims he's not worried about the military budget, but despite this, all of which should be obvious, Liz Cheney is saying Ronald Reagan taught us that weakness is provocative. China and Russia are watching. If GOP leader agreed to weaken our national defense for his own personal gain, that will be his legacy and our nation will suffer. Jennifer Rubin is writing op-eds in the Washington Post. MAGA House members' defense cuts encourage America's enemies. It's only gonna make authoritarians, despots, and dictators smile. Putin wins. Joe Scarborough on MSNBC characterized the proposal as part of a radical and anti-American approach to defund the military. Again, they're not saying they're gonna do that. They're explicitly saying they're not gonna do that, and obviously they're not going to do that. Why is DC pretending that they're gonna do that? I apologize, I've got to pee under my bonnet about this. Why?
Can we just take a moment to soak in the imagery of John having an actual bee under his bonnet? Just picture.
I'm using old-timey language because Biden's president.
There's a bee under my bonnet. I can't even focus.
Okay, there's a rattlesnake in my boot.
There's a rattlesnake in my boot. Thank you, Woody. All right, so this is great because no one, like business is back to usual, right? This is hilarious. Everybody is back to fighting over who's gonna raise more military budgets. This is exactly what Kevin McCarthy wanted. He got over his little last hurdle. Everybody in the Republican side is gonna get back to proving every point we've ever made about how like the radical right doesn't care about most people and the radical left actually does. Because all these people on the radical right are like, I'll vote with Matt Gaetz because I don't want to increase crazy spending. So they got that in their pocket. Because of that, now they're gonna justify cutting spending to literally everything else.
Yeah.
And the only way in which the right wing would ever agree to cutting military spending is if they start going bit by bit through parts of military initiatives and saying how those initiatives are woke. So if there is gonna be a cut, it's going to be a cut to like should there be any female soldiers? Should there be any like initiatives to help diversify the membership or leadership of the military? It's only gonna be the stuff in the military that is only partly bad.
I have
and
proof
less
of that.
horrible. Oh, you do you?
Oh yeah, no, it's very clear. And I just want to briefly stop because some of you might be watching and you might be thinking, okay, so it is clear from this evidence that they're not really gonna do this, but what does it matter? Why does that bother you? And maybe this is just a thing that I'm hyper focused on, but we have got this attempt over the last couple of years for the Republican Party, both the politician side and the pundit side, to rebrand themselves as populists. And it's fake. It's not real. They don't actually want to do any of this stuff. So this is a week-long news cycle of the most radical conservative Republicans being pitched as people willing to cut military spending, which they are simply not willing to do. There are people who are willing to cut military spending, and I think there are a lot of Americans who would support politicians like that. These just very much are not them. So how dare people like Jennifer Rubin and Joe Scarborough allow them to get fake cred for something they would literally never do? That's why it bothers me.
I know it's just specifically about like the Liz Cheney and to a lesser extent, but an existing extent, Rubin. I feel like Rubin came out against Trump for a handful of minutes and so did Liz Cheney. And it was one of those moments where it's like, I can't believe I remember liking you sort of for like 20 minutes. And with Liz Cheney, it's exactly that. It's like, you did real good in the January 6th committee hearings, but now you're back to the same old, that's right, that is a Cheney type of tweeting.
100%. Now, I looked as long and hard as I could to find literally anyone on the right who was actually suggesting that they would be willing to cut the military. And I found a headline. It was Jordan, Jim Jordan, says cuts to the military spending should be on the table. And I thought, oh, okay. Well, there's at least one Republican who is implying that we should cut military spending, except that is not what he is saying, because that's the headline. I went to the actual video that article was referencing, and here is the point he was actually making.
We got a $32 trillion debt. Everything has to be on the table. We're on pace to spend $500, $600 billion in debt payments, and just to deal with interest payments on servicing that debt. Everything has to be on the table. And frankly, maybe if we would focus our military spending on the soldiers and not having so many the ratio of general officers to enlisted individuals now is so out of whack from where it used to be in our military. Maybe if we'd focus on that, helping the troops who do so much of the work out there for our great country, and maybe focus on getting rid of all the woke policies in our military, we'd have the money we need to make sure our troops get the pay raise they deserve. We have the weapon systems and the training that needs to be done so we're ready to deal with our adversaries around the planet. That's what we want to focus on. And frankly, we better look at the money we send to Ukraine as well and say, how can we best spend the money to protect America?
In the same way that the overall idea that Republicans are considering cutting the budget is a sham, the specific idea that Jim Jordan is interested in that is absolute BS. It is not on the table. He didn't say 2% cut, 5% cut, 10% cut. He said stop with the woke soldiers and stop sending money to Ukraine. He still wants he wants the money for the soldiers, the weapon systems, the training, and to engage with our adversaries around the world. There's no drawback, there's no drawdown, there's no cuts. It's just less pregnant air women. That's all that he wants there.
If you oppose the Taliban in Afghanistan, then you are espousing woke policies around the planet because you want women to go to college. You want all that stuff. You want to marry. That's a woke policy, you doink. That's the whole thing. It's so stupid. All he is doing is very lazily, because he doesn't want to talk about what happened to kids in the bathroom at the Ohio State University wrestling team. Look it up. He is lazily looking into his like grab bag of right-wing talking points and just applying it to every issue he possibly can. So he's like, oh God, what if I do want to cut military spending? What if I'm forced into it? I'm just gonna say the military's woke. What policies? Are we really worried about woke soldiers? You're mad about like 2 ads they made so they could recruit more people to join the military. You're fighting so hard against every incentive, every way to disincentivize people from joining the military, such as like student loan forgiveness, which would make it so people have another avenue towards success besides sacrificing their body for your war so you could bring woke policies to Afghanistan.
Yeah.
You moron. And then it's very frustrating to watch this all unfold, but it, at the same time is quite hilarious.
Yeah, there are some politicians that actually want to cut military spending and understand that doing that will not leave us insecure. If we could jump to our last graphic for this block. Again, I will remind you, as TYT does constantly, we spend more than basically everyone combined. Cutting the military spending by $75 billion would only take us back to 2021. Were we on the brink of being invaded in 2021? The idea that we couldn't secure America with $400 billion or $200 billion is utter madness.
And let's look at China's spending to make them more secure around the world. It's not all military. Most of it is investments in infrastructure domestically, but specifically abroad. Like Martha McCallum in the middle of a weird segment about M&Ms was talking about China is essentially monopolizing all the international mineral deposits. That's what they do. That's how they invest abroad. They might have a larger budget, but theirs is constructive to get people to like them internationally. Ours is just a dump into the military industrial complex.
Yeah.
And the thing that they're not talking about, they're gonna say listen, people like Liz Cheney, Jim Jordan, they're gonna say every dollar we don't spend on military investment is making us less safe domestically. I would say this, I'm glad they're safe while they're starving.
Yeah.
What about every dollar that you could, I know we do spend, people talk about this, but we do spend more money on domestic programs than we do spend on the military by a lot. But every dollar we spend over what we have to on the military, you need to do a better accounting of that. And your Pentagon, which you love, fails an audit every single year. You got to justify why you want to spend that money on another plane that doesn't really work.
Thanks for watching the Young Turks, really appreciate it. Another way to show support is through YouTube memberships. You'll get to interact with us more. There's live chat emojis, badges. You've got emojis of me, Anna, John, JR. So those are super fun. But you also get playback of our exclusive member-only shows and specials right after they air. So all of that, all you gotta do is click that join button right underneath the video. Thank you.